This happened to me last year, and I still can't get it out of my head. It was just a few days before New Year's Eve. Everything seemed normal until that night. I had moved here 2 months earlier. The neighborhood was quiet, the streets were spotless, but I still didn't know anyone. Knowing I'd be spending New Year's Eve alone, I stayed late at work. I was one of the last people in the office. While everyone talked about their plans, all I wanted was to go home, eat something, and watch a movie. By the time I stepped outside, the snowstorm had already picked up. The snow under the streetlights made the road almost disappear. When I returned to the neighborhood, most of the houses were dark. It looked like everyone had left town for the holidays. I pulled into my driveway and parked the car. I turned on the lights and went inside. The emptiness hit me again. The furniture still wasn't arranged. As I took off my shoes, I muttered, "Just one night." It was around 9. I heard a police siren far away, fading quickly into the wind. When I looked out the window, all I saw was swirling white. I turned on the TV and tried to pick a movie, but that slight uneasiness wouldn't go away. Just then, a faint metallic clink came from outside, like the lid of the mailbox snapping shut. My eyebrows pulled together. No mail came this late. I went to the window, but the storm made it impossible to see anything. I listened for a moment. It wasn't the wind. It was too controlled, too regular. Curiosity got the better of me. I put on my coat and went outside. I walked to the mailbox and lifted the lid. Inside was nothing but an empty shipping barcode label, torn off, with no name or address. I turned it over, held it up to the light, checked again. Nothing. The wind couldn't have brought this, I thought. The label was dry and intact. If it had been under the snow, it would have been mush. Honestly, I didn't think much of it in that moment. I was exhausted. I slipped the label into my pocket and went back inside. I locked the door and slid the chain across, but the chill inside me hadn't fully gone. A little later, the movie finally started, but I couldn't stop glancing at the curtains, feeling the urge to look outside. When the clock struck 10 p.m., there were 3 sharp knocks on the door knocker. I jumped where I stood. My hand shot to my chest. Slowly, I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Under the yellow glow of the porch light stood a man dressed in a Santa Claus costume. For a second, I just stared. Then, when I recognized his face, whatever faint smile I had completely vanished. The costume was wrong. The red fabric looked faded. A small tear ran along his wrist. The white beard sat crooked, the elastic digging awkwardly into his chin. And the expression on his face. He didn't look like someone smiling, more like someone carefully studying something. He held a small metal bell in his hand. Then he spoke, his voice deep. A little New Year's visit for the neighbors. There was no tradition like that in this neighborhood. I didn't even consider opening the door. Keeping my voice steady from behind the door, I said, "No, thank you. I don't need anything." The man didn't move. He slowly tilted his head to the side. At the same time, he glanced through the porch window, looking directly inside. His expression almost said, "I see you. I just wanted to share some good wishes," he said. And before finishing the sentence, his voice shifted noticeably. "I noticed you're alone in there. Do you need anything?" The emphasis on those last words hit me like a punch. It was intentional, too intentional. "No, really, good night," I said. Even I could hear the tension in my own voice. He didn't say a word. He just stared for a few seconds. Then, still gripping the bell tightly, he slowly stepped back. Only then did I realize I had been holding my breath. I inhaled deeply and double-checked the chain. "It's over," I whispered to myself. Weird, but it's over. But as I tried to calm down, a completely different sound came from outside. Heavy footsteps in the snow, moving around the house, slow, deliberate. I grabbed my phone and dialed the police. The screen flashed. No signal. As I stepped toward the hallway leading to the back door, The footsteps stopped right there. The back door handle rattled. That faint metallic vibration shattered the silence inside the house. A second rattle followed, this one hard enough to shake the door, as if it might tear off its hinges. It didn't seem like it could survive another hit. In the dim living room light, I hurriedly grabbed my coat and half pulled on my boots. I had only one thought: get out through the front door. Run. Go to the neighbors. I made the decision instantly. I unlatched the chain, opened the door, and took a deep breath. Now, I whispered. By the time I reached my neighbor's house, my fingers were numb. Pressing the doorbell was difficult, so I knocked with my fist. When the door opened and my neighbor, Mrs. Carter, appeared, the knot in my stomach loosened. What happened? What's going on? She asked, alarmed. With a trembling voice, I managed to say, behind my house. Someone's trying the door. She immediately let me in and locked the door. The warmth hit me like a wave. The fireplace was burning. Everything looked so normal that for a moment, what had happened felt unreal. But my pounding heart kept reminding me it was real. Mrs. Carter grabbed the phone and called the police right away. While we waited, I peeked outside through the curtains. Snow spun around the streetlights like a vortex. My house was just a dark silhouette buried in snow. For a moment, I thought I saw a reddish shadow leaning toward the porch. I blinked. The snow swallowed everything again. About half an hour later, sirens approached. After a short conversation, the officers headed toward my house. I knew I shouldn't watch, but I couldn't look away. When they reached the back, there was a moment of silence. Then one of them lifted a flashlight. The back door handle was bent, as if someone had pushed down with all their strength, but the lock had held. Another officer pointed at a window. A dirty fingernail mark streaked along the edge of the glass, like someone had tested it, then moved on. When they went inside, some of the furniture had been moved. It wasn't like that when I left. The small speaker on the table was gone. Its cord was lying on the floor. A few other items were missing too. The muddy boot prints across the floor explained everything. Then I remembered the barcode label in my pocket. I took it out and handed it to the officer. He looked at it, his expression shifting. "This was torn off a package," he said. "No tracking number. Some thieves use these to get close to a house." Suddenly, everything made sense. The cheap costume, the silent bell, the distracted expression, the force on the back door, the moved furniture, the boot prints. I spent that night in Mrs. Carter's guest room. Even with the lights off, I could hear the storm outside. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the man's face under the porch light, the way he tilted his head, that steady, silent stare. The police opened a case, calling it a suspicious attempt. The man never showed up again. But since that night, I always lock my door twice. And sometimes I still ask myself, did he really give up that night? Or did he just realize he knocked on the wrong door at the wrong time? I was heading to my family's place for Christmas break. Normally, it was a boring, straightforward 6-hour drive with a coffee stop halfway through. But that evening, nothing went according to plan. I left work late, the snow had already started falling heavily, and when I got into the car, the hood was coated in a thin layer of ice. Still, I stayed optimistic. Half a tank of gas, new tires, coffee and snacks in the passenger seat. This too shall pass, I told myself. The first hour on the highway wasn't too bad. Christmas lights on houses flashed by, then vanished into the darkness. Then suddenly, red brake lights lit up ahead. I slowed down and came to a full stop. The entire highway was gridlocked. I opened the navigation. Hundreds of cars lined up along a long red line. A faster route found? I tapped without hesitation. It suggested a rural road, a narrow, single-lane route through quiet towns. Normally, I wouldn't take a road like that at night, but I didn't want to sit in traffic. I took the exit ramp, and soon the crowd disappeared behind me. The dashboard still felt reassuring. The phone signal flickered in and out, but the navigation kept the route. A few minutes after entering the town road, I saw a truck on the left, a yellow pickup, a rotating beacon on the back, cones, a road narrowing sign. Everything looked normal. I slowed down and moved into the lane marked by the cones. Then a detail caught my eye. The truck's license plate was almost completely covered in mud. Maybe normal in weather like this. But the mud was too thick. It looked like someone had smeared it on deliberately. Then there was the sign. The letters were uneven, like it had been put up in a hurry. I tried to reassure myself. No one can work properly in this cold. I passed the narrowed section and kept going. When I checked the mirror one last time, the orange beacons spun faintly in the snow. I didn't think much of it, and I didn't even notice at first that the phone signal had completely vanished. The no service message on the screen brought a strange, heavy silence to the dark country road. As I rounded a bend, my headlights caught something. A barrier, knocked over, partly blocking the road, and next to it, a man in a red jacket stood with his arms out, signaling me to stop. I couldn't hear his voice, but his movements were clear. I pulled over. I felt torn. Part of me wanted to help. The other part stayed cautious. I cracked the window slightly. The man walked up quickly. "The road ahead is closed," he called. "A tree fell. You need to turn back." His voice sounded normal. He wore a reflective vest. Snowflakes clung to his shoulders. Everything seemed fine. Then I turned on the interior light, and that tiny action completely changed the atmosphere. The logo on his vest had been scratched off. The faint outline of letters was still visible underneath, like someone had tried to paint over it, but didn't finish the job. My throat tightened. "Which crew are you with?" I asked. His eyes drifted for a fraction of a second. Barely noticeable, but enough for me to know something was wrong. Then he looked back at me. His expression had changed. So had his voice. "Do as I say," he said quietly. "You can't go forward." Out of the corner of my eye, in the darkness to the left, I saw something. A silhouette. Another person standing still. A fixed shadow between the road and the trees. My breathing quickened. I reached for the window button. The man immediately grabbed the door handle. His face was inches from the glass. "Turn back," he repeated. "I'm telling you, you're going to turn back." And just then, a light flared behind me. I glanced at the rearview mirror. My heart dropped. A pickup truck had stopped behind me. The exact same one from earlier. The roof light, the muddy body, the color. Everything was identical. The overturned barrier in front. The man in the red jacket beside me. The silent figure on my left. The same truck behind me. It felt like they had been waiting right here. My pulse was pounding in my ears. I scanned left and right, searching desperately for an escape. On the right, I saw a narrow service road buried in mud. Normally, not even a decent car could manage it, but I had no other choice. As the man in the red jacket yanked at the door handle, I made my decision. I turned the steering wheel to the right. I slammed the gas pedal all the way down. The car skidded. Snow and mud choked the wheels. All I could think was, "Don't look at his face. Don't look." I pressed harder. The tires finally caught. As the car crushed the cones and lurched onto the muddy service road, I heard the man's angry shout fade behind me. At the same time, the yellow roof light spun wildly. Its glow drew trembling circles in the snow. The car fishtailed the moment it hit the mud. I gripped the wheel. The tires slid left and right. The mud felt deep enough to swallow the car whole, but I didn't stop. Stopping wasn't an option. I glanced at the mirror. Both trucks were trying to follow me onto the muddy road. Their headlights vanished into the snow, then reappeared. "Please," I whispered. "Hold on." The car swerved a few more times. It looked like I'd crash into the wall of the road, but suddenly the ground leveled out. I hit firmer terrain. The headlights stretched farther ahead. This road, it probably wasn't even on the map. I kept driving for a few minutes. My breathing was uneven. Every shadow felt alive. Mud kept striking the sides of the car with metallic clanks. At some point, I realized there were no headlights anymore. Not behind me, not to the right, not to the left. It was like both trucks had vanished into the dark. But I didn't dare stop. Eventually, the road widened, and the mud gave way to smooth asphalt. I exhaled, a real breath, for the first time in a while. Just then, my phone found a signal. The navigation lit up again. The map reappeared. The blue arrow showed a route leading back to the main road. When I reached it, the snow had eased. Visibility improved. At the end of the intersection, there was an actual road maintenance crew. But this time, everything was right. Official vehicles with printed logos, perfectly placed cones, workers in proper gear, the rhythmic flash of real beacons. I pulled over. When I lowered the window, a warm voice called out, "Are you okay? No one comes through here in this weather." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I told him everything. As I talked, the worker's face grew serious. When I finished, he shook his head. "We don't have a truck in this area. We didn't send anyone. Fake roadblocks have been popping up for weeks. Someone's been stopping vehicles. Good thing you didn't stay there." A cold wave ran down my spine. He continued, "The road you came from is closed tonight because of the mud. Normal cars can't get in or out. I honestly don't know how you managed." He paused mid-sentence. He looked like he wanted to say something else, then didn't. I looked in the mirror. At the entrance to the muddy road, nothing. No headlights, no tracks, no overturned barrier, no silhouettes. The snow had swallowed everything, as if they had never been there. I sat in my car for a long time. My hands were still shaking. When I finally reached my family's house, everyone was asleep. When I turned off the engine, the silence felt heavier than at any moment on the road. But two things stayed with me from that night: the carved-out logo on the vest, and that second silhouette, standing completely still in the snow. There were 3 days left until Christmas. My plan was simple. I would go up to the mountain house before my family arrived and spend 2 days alone. The mountain cabin was an old family place, tucked among pine trees above the village. The first part of the trip was peaceful. I stopped in town to shop. Coffee, a few cans of food, soup, and snacks. But once the village lights disappeared behind me, the road up the mountain suddenly became deserted. It was already getting dark when I reached the house. The moment I stepped onto the porch, a familiar smell hit me. Cold wood, old smoke, pine. When I opened the door and walked inside, a deep silence wrapped around me. The silence of an empty house in winter is different. It feels like the house is watching you, weighing you. I lit the fireplace for the first time. I felt relieved when the flames caught. A box of Christmas decorations sat in the corner of the living room. When my family arrived, we'd decorate the tree together. The evening went as planned. I worked a little. Outside, the wind picked up. Pine trees rubbed against each other, and as the snow on the roof grew heavier, the house creaked softly. I was used to these sounds. They felt normal to me by now. Around 10 o'clock, the electricity flickered. The lights went out, then came back on. My phone still had no signal. Classic mountain cabin, I muttered. I sat by the fireplace, picked up my book, and read for a while. When my eyes grew heavy, I checked the lower floor before going to bed. The front door bolt was locked. The back door was locked. All the windows were closed. Everything was normal. When I went upstairs, the guest room door was shut. The box of Christmas decorations was in the living room corner, its lid closed. I remember thinking, maybe I'll set up the tree tomorrow. By the time I got into bed, the storm had grown fierce. The wind circled the house like a living thing. Every so often it slammed against the walls. I tried to sleep, but in the quiet, every sound felt magnified. At some point, I heard a faint sound coming from the guest room upstairs. A short click, not random, more deliberate. It didn't sound like something the wind would move. I lifted my head and listened. For a moment, there was a soft scraping sound on the carpet. So faint it could have been my imagination. Never mind, I whispered. Just an old house. I don't remember when I finally fell asleep. I woke the next morning with a strange feeling. The house looked the same, but something felt different. As I stepped into the hallway, ready to go downstairs and make coffee, I froze. The box of Christmas decorations was open. The lid wasn't fully closed, and a few baubles had rolled across the carpet. I was certain I hadn't touched the box last night. I knelt beside it. The packing paper inside looked disturbed, jumbled, as if someone had searched through it quickly. A cold uneasiness spread through me. My eyes drifted toward the guest room. The door was slightly open. It had been shut last night. I was absolutely sure. I approached, paused, and listened. No sound. I slowly pushed the door open. The room was colder than the rest of the house. A thin layer of snow dusted the windowsill. The lock was loose. Maybe the wind had rattled the window all night. Maybe even the door. As I tried to calm myself, something else caught my eye. Wet tracks on the carpet leading toward the window. Dark stains left by melting snow. The shapes were irregular but unmistakably like footprints. As if someone had walked inside wearing boots, my heartbeat quickened. I stepped forward, and then saw movement in the shadowed corner of the room. A silhouette. My breath stopped. As my eyes adjusted, I realized what I was looking at. A man crouched down. He lifted his head slightly. I saw his breath in the cold air before I saw his face. Our eyes met. For a moment, he froze. I couldn't make a sound. Then he suddenly sprang up, rushed to the window, and shoved the frame. The loose lock gave way. The window opened instantly. Cold air blasted in. The man threw himself outside. I caught a glimpse of the roof's edge and the snow-covered yard. He slid down and vanished into the roaring storm. I couldn't move for several seconds. Then I rushed to the window and looked out. Below, a single set of footprints stretched toward the back of the house in the snow. But there were no footprints leading back. That's when I realized. This man hadn't escaped during the night. He had been inside the house all night. While I slept, he'd been breathing, waiting, just a few meters away. When I stepped back from the window, my legs were shaking. The room suddenly felt smaller, as if the walls were closing in. Cold air poured through the open window, but I didn't reach for it. First, I needed to understand. I took a deep breath and went downstairs. Each step felt louder than usual. The house was still, almost like it wanted to deny what had happened. I turned on the lights. The living room looked the same. The fireplace was out, ashes gray. The decorations box was still open. I picked up a bauble. It was cold. No clear fingerprints. I went to the front door. The bolt was locked. Everything was in place. I opened the door and stepped out onto the porch. Snow reached my knees. The storm had buried everything overnight. When I bent down, I saw it. A few fingerprints smudged with dried mud on the wood beneath the handle. Someone had tried the door. When they couldn't get in, they moved on. I checked the back door, locked tight. The windows downstairs were shut. Only the guest room window upstairs. Its lock had been loose. That's how he got in. I went back upstairs. The wet marks on the carpet were already fading, their edges melting. It felt like the house itself was slowly erasing the night. The closet door was slightly open. I checked inside, nothing missing. I stood where the man had crouched. "What were you looking for?" I whispered. Of course, nothing answered. I grabbed my phone. Still no signal. It was snowing lightly, but the wind had eased. Looking out the window, I saw the marks where the man had slid off the roof, but only for a few meters. Then they vanished into untouched snow. I wandered the house for a while. Drawers, cupboards, everything was in place. Nothing taken. That was the most unsettling part. He wasn't a thief. He wasn't desperate. He had been calm enough to stay in the house until morning. By noon, the storm had weakened. When I heard a car approaching on the road, I jumped. I packed nothing. I left the house exactly as it was. Somehow fixing anything felt like pretending the night hadn't happened. On my way down the mountain, I ran into the control teams. I told them everything. Their expressions didn't change, as if this wasn't unusual. Several other houses were tried during the night, they said. Probably someone looking for shelter from the storm. No ID, the tracks are buried. I nodded, but even after going home and taking a long, hot shower, the heaviness inside me didn't fade. He had rummaged through the decorations. He had tried the doors. He had searched the cupboards. Then he had gone upstairs and waited in my house, just a few meters away, and one question still won't leave my mind. Was that man really looking for something that night? Or was he waiting for the right moment